I came back to Brown County today. When I was 13 years old, I lived in a trailer park with my twin brother and my mom. My dad's always been in the picture, and he's been a big part of my life. It's just when my twin brother and I were really little, my parents divorced, and so I've always been kind of used to having two different forces in my life. I lived with my dad briefly for 2 years, but for the most part of my childhood, I lived with my mom and my stepdad. There was a period where my mom and my stepdad were having issues, and so she left and ended up renting a trailer park in this really small town in Indiana. Very, not a great area as far as wealth and money and stuff like that goes, very budget friendly. So you can imagine, the type of people around that area. Not to say it's bad, it's just, the economic class. And I drove back there to take a look at it not too long ago, and it shocked me at how different my life is now, because I live in one of the nicest places in the entire Midwest now. I live in Westfield, Indiana, which is a suburb of Indianapolis. So it is one of the nicest places to live in the state of Indiana. It's the fastest growing city in the state, and it's also the sixth fastest growing city in the country. And the fact that I am starting a pretty difficult career at such a young age and truly doing it on my own, in the sense of I live by myself and I'm fully, independent in that sense. I think there's something to be taken note of there. I'm lifting my hair up because it's a little messy. And today I was just thinking about just reflecting on my whole life, and I didn't go through a lot of trauma in that sense, but I have gone through a lot of difficult things in my life. Notably, my confidence growing up, being the new kid in school every now and then I finally moved to Brown County when I was 12 and stayed there throughout school. Growing up with not a lot of money was hard on me, considering a lot of my friends had many things that I didn't have. And so for most of my life, I felt like I've always been left out, that I felt different, that something in me I didn't seem to click right with everybody. And it's started ever since I was a little kid. My parents divorced, so I lived two different lives. And when I moved to Brown County, all my friends had computers, they had all these nice things, they had girlfriends, whatever. And I always seemed to be the guy left out, or I'd always be the third, oddball of a group. Not to say that I was weird or anything, just I felt very out of place. And I felt that way for most of my life. And it didn't stop in middle school. It also had to do with the fact that I had a huge crush on a girl in 8th grade. And my entire 8th grade year was about me really liking this new girl that came to my school. And I did everything to get with her. She was really pretty. And so she became a very popular girl very quickly. And I remember I sang a song for her in the talent show, and I wrote her, I painted her a sign asking her to the formal. And I really wanted to get with her because I genuinely felt like if I had a girlfriend like her, it would just make my life so much better, and I would finally get that validation that I didn't really feel like I was getting with my stepdad, or honestly with my mom. But that has to do with more the fact that she was working as a certified nursing assistant, so she worked 80-hour weeks, and so she couldn't take a lot of time to focus on Vince and I, my twin brother. And so I felt like if I ended up dating her, then it would be this huge thing for me. We never ended up dating or anything like that, of course, although she was never mean to me. She was very nice and sweet. But it continued and it continued until I got into college. So when I became a freshman at IU, I was really starting to become anti-party. And so throughout my 4 years in college, really more my 2 years, my third and fourth were a lot more relaxed. But my first 2 years in college, I really felt out of place because I wasn't really much of a drinker. I wasn't much of a partier, but I felt like it was a culture that was so heavily pressed onto me. And during that time of my life, I was very much anti-degeneracy, anti-partying. anti-college student stuff, and it got to the point where I became extremely hateful, and it really messed with my confidence there, kind of feeling out of place again. It almost made me drop out of college. My leasing job. So right before my senior year, I ended up working as a leasing consultant for a company. And the place that I worked at for a year, I loved the people that I worked with. But up until the time I left, I always felt out of place there because my coworker, who ended up becoming the assistant manager and then the actual community manager, really felt like they were really much the same people in the way that they did things. And I always got like called out for making mistakes. And not to say the work environment was bad. It was great. I still love them a lot. But they worked in such a way that made me feel out of place. And sometimes I felt more like a liability and really didn't feel like I was getting a lot done. Even though they said that wasn't the case, I just felt that way. So the bottom line, and the reason why I'm trying to say this, is I felt like I've been out of place my whole life. And, sometimes I feel like when I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs go through that. Like everybody I've talked to that have started a business, and even whether it's real estate or anything, they always have something about them that makes them really stand out from others. And I think it doesn't just have to do with the fact that they don't work like a normal job. I just think everyone's got their calling in life and they have their thing that they were meant to do. And Steve Rupp calls it a superpower. And I've felt this superpower within me my whole life. And it's cultivated in a way that has really made me, like I said, feel different from my peers and people around me. And it has to do with the fact that I finally know that my goal, my one mission in life, is to give back and create value and show people my creativity, whether it be through books, whether it be through drawings, whether it be through real estate and making a business and helping people. I was made to show my creativity and show my value, create value to the world. And, when I ended up talking with people my age, whether it was 12 years old, or whether it be 17, or whether it be 23, or I guess I am about to be 23. It's just something that I feel like many people my age just cannot seem to really understand. It's either that or I'm just terrible at explaining things. And I'm not to say that it's great or like I stand out and I'm special. If anything, it's really made me feel out of place and very alone a lot of the time. But I'm not alone, though. That's the thing. Like, I'm not, because I have a twin brother, okay? And he and I have been together, like, before we were even born. And so we've always talked about things, like our goals in life, whatever we'd want to do. And we were both very driven, ambitious people. And, it's always been like that our whole life. And I don't know, like I've always been grateful to have him as a brother and able to talk about these things with him, and like he's always able to listen to me talk and everything. And so, when I am here alone, I don't often think like a lot about the good things, like I said. And so, I often look towards a negative on things that I really want to critique on, like my lead follow-up, my, problems that I have in my business. But I don't often sit back and think about how great my life is. And so I want to take this video to kind of talk about that. Okay. So I map my life out like it's a story. Okay. I map out like there's chapters, there's segments to this long, prolonged story of my life. Okay. And I don't share this with people. I don't even share this with my twin brother. But I make it this case because it's the only way I can feel like my life makes sense. Okay, when I was a kid, I wrote stories, I drew, and like that was my thing. When I played with action figures, I would make up stories to tell. And that's sort of been my thing my whole life. And so I do the same thing with my own personal life. And, like I said, it's the only way I actually make my life make sense. And so everybody I meet that's of significance is like their own character in my world. And looking back at everything I've done, truth is, you probably don't know a lot about me if you're watching this video. And what I'm saying right now probably seems a little alien or a little bit off to you. But let me go ahead and put it in a way that makes sense. When I was born in Indianapolis. My parents have been together up until 2011, so they were together for about 16 years, so until the mid-90s, and they ended up getting a divorce. After that, I moved to Brown County briefly for a year, until I moved back in with my dad for 2 years in Indianapolis because my mom could not afford to have us 4 children. Yes, us 4 kids with her by herself, making $13 an hour, $10 an hour. And so I lived with my dad in Indianapolis for 2 years, and it was just my twin brother and I. And so my twin brother and I and my sister lived with my dad, and then my older brother lived with my mom. And up until 2 years after my 5th grade year, I moved back in with my mom, and by that point, my sister still lived with my dad, and my older brother moved out of the house. And so my twin brother and I lived in Brown County again for 6th grade all the way to senior year of high school. During that time frame, my stepdad was very critical on the way my twin brother and I were, and that's because we didn't behave like his kids did. So we weren't very much like manly kids in the sense that we didn't really like shoot bow and arrows. We didn't like go hunting. We didn't do a lot of man stuff. We were still very much like children. And so we would play with toys. We'd really like a lot of cartoon stuff and very normal stuff for kids. But to him, that didn't seem normal. And so I grew up with him being a very judgmental, very critical person on our life and very harsh the way he was with his kids. But he never showed love. And so that feeling of not being validated by him really messed with my self-esteem growing up. And he was abusive verbally and stuff like that. And so setting that aside, I made a lot of great friends in school. And even though sometimes I felt out of place, I was never truly bullied. I was never really bullied until I liked that girl in 8th grade. And then all the popular basketball, football guys ended up picking on me for it. But for the most part, I wasn't really a picked on kid. And again, that makes me something I'm very grateful for. And so I did go through a lot of hardships with that. And I can tell you so many other stories, but it wouldn't really do anything for you. And I'll just say that the friends that I made in Brown County and throughout my life are people that I will always remember and cherish, and I still talk with them to this day. And it continued on when I went to IU. I met my best friend Jack at IU, and I've been friends with my best friend Dylan for over 11 years. And so I have really good relationships with my friends and family. And like I said, I'm so grateful for them, and I'm very grateful for my twin brother. I don't know where I'd be without him. Genuinely, he's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I value him more than my own life. And so real estate to me is a business where I can provide value and still be in connections with people that have meant so much to me in my life. And so I wanted to sit back in here and just think about that. Now, the thing that's making me emotional right now is because I'm thinking about where I came from in a very broke family. And just thinking about how my parents talk about how proud they are of me. Because, my mom she had a really crappy life. And my dad didn't really have a good life either. And so, I like to think that I'm doing a lot of good things for them, and it goes back to my big why on why I do these things. And it's because I love the people in my life, like my relationships and stuff. And I was given an opportunity to do the things I really want to do with my life, and I'm blessed to be able to start a business at a young age and have parents that love me and care about me. Not many people can really say that, and I think about, some people I know who they don't even talk to their parents or they don't even know their parents. And just to think that, like, I have everything I need to keep going makes me so grateful and cherished. Because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, right? And everything has perfectly aligned for me to capitalize on these opportunities and for me to keep moving forward. And yeah, it's hard right now, but I promise I'm not trying to like overindulge in this. It's just genuinely, when you think really deep about things, you often get very emotional. And sometimes in these videos, I go, through emotions and I don't really talk really deeply about things, but my relationships mean everything to me, and my future relationships and everything. And what I'm doing right now is actually, I don't give myself enough credit, because I could be not doing the things I want to do with my life and just stay in a bland job. And not to say that that's bad if it's something you enjoy, not at all, but just the fact that I get the opportunity to do this and to live in a very nice area and to have parents that care about me, it's remarkable. With that being said, my family is, they're struggling pretty tremendously. My mom is doing great. She's a registered nurse now. She's got a home and everything. And my older brother, he has his issues going on, but he's in college right now. He's in college and he's about to be 30 this year, and he's been great. My twin brother is about to go into the Air Force, but my sister, her and I have had a very interesting relationship because she has been very much like high for a lot of her life. And so she's been battling with drugs and stuff for most of her life. And it wasn't ever really an issue between her and I's relationship until last fall, when she became very rude and disrespectful towards me. And now our relationship is very strained, and I don't really know how to feel about it because I don't want to go into details on it, but that right there is the reason why I'm doing this, is what I'm doing right now, is because I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice, and I'm not trying to be overzealous. I promise you, I'm not trying to say I'm special and I'm great and like I gotta help my family and getting that sense of like self-indulgence. It has nothing to do with myself. It's responsibility and just acknowledging that there's no other path for me as far as going to become something and build success for my future generations or not. And I'm saying this out of the bottom of my heart. This video wasn't really about real estate. It actually wasn't really about entrepreneurship either. This video is just about how I'm feeling. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be in this opportunity and to have people that care about me. And I genuinely believe I was born here to do something and give value to the world. And yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say in this video. I would like to see some future relationship down the road. I've been thinking a lot about building relationships and having my first girlfriend and stuff, but with that being said, there's a lot more work I need to get done, and I need to focus on what I'm doing right now. But we'll go ahead and pick it up tomorrow. It is Labor Day tomorrow, but there's no days off in entrepreneurship. No true days off. I'll see you guys on the 30th. And Good night, guys. Sleep well. Thank you for listening to my story.